Hi, I'm Lena Rao. Welcome to CrunchWeek, where we discuss this week's interesting stories. I'm joined by Colleen Taylor and Ryan Lawler, my colleagues here at TechCrunch. Lots of exciting news this week. Instagram, let's start out with some of the developments. It seems like weekly there's something new happening with them. But this week they announced an update to their terms of service so that they reserved the right to basically sell access to its users' photos to companies that want to use them in advertisements. Sort of similar to the way that Facebook sells access to some of our updates on the social network for sponsored stories. But this kind of created a huge backlash amongst users and the tech blogosphere over privacy issues, and people thought maybe Instagram was taking away the right, they were actually selling photos and not, anyway, it was a big ordeal. Colleen, you wrote about this week.
I did write about this. I mean, this is interesting because it went far beyond tech. There were people, Anderson Cooper was tweeting about it. A ton of celebrities were tweeting about it because Instagram has become so popular, and everybody, backlash is the only word that you can use for it. But so there were some key misunderstandings here. They didn't change the terms of service right away. These were proposed changes that were going to go into effect in mid-January. So as of now, it's still the same. I think we had a great video yesterday with Josh Constantine and Drew Olenoff talking about this. A lot of people like Josh's hair.
Well, they kind of walked through like the basic terms and what does it mean and how does it affect your photos, and kind of made it easier to understand.
Yeah, I think it seems like a clear, continuation now that Instagram's part of Facebook. This is standard practice a lot of times at Facebook to kind of like push the envelope a little bit, see how people react, then recalibrate. So it just seems like Instagram's following in those footsteps. Instagram co-founder Kevin Systrom put out a blog post that, we're listening, hear you, we're going to make changes. I don't know. Ryan,
I think part of it is just the messaging, right? The messaging was so bad around this. And I think it's typically whenever, a startup changes their terms of service, this is not just a problem that, Instagram has. It seems like Twitter's had this problem, Facebook's had this problem, all sorts of, these free services, free consumer services. Whenever they change their terms of service, there's always someone like looking through line by line being like, how are they screwing us? Yeah. And so I think part of it is just comes down to messaging. They did a really, really poor job of anticipating how people would read these changes. And part of that video with Josh was basically just saying, like, look, this is how you should handle it. This is how you make sure that users know what they're actually opting into when that happens.
And it's just interesting. I mean, obviously now Instagram, it sounds like they're making a lot of significant product steps and now privacy steps towards creating a business around what they're doing, photo sharing. And it's interesting sort of to see the user backlash against that, because it's not just, these terms of service, this was this week's, but then the week before there was like, the whole web, the focus towards the web and taking some of the presence away from Twitter. It's almost like maturing as a company, but are users really responding well to some of these steps?
I think it's just so interesting because this is the internet. Everybody just wants things to be free, and they don't realize that it costs a lot of money to run something like Instagram or something like Facebook. But I mean, this happens time and time again. People are just like, oh my goodness, you guys have to make money? Whoa, I had no idea. People use these services for free. But yeah.
But it comes down to that famous quote, and I forget who it was, but if you're not paying for something, you're the product. And really, that's kind of what it comes down to, is if these companies aren't actually selling the service, then at some point advertising is going to be a part of it, and they're monetizing by reaching an audience or by using your content to profit off of it.
Yeah, well, it should be an interesting 2013 for Instagram. I mean, now that some of these policies will take effect, they're moving over towards a newer web presence. So I guess we'll see, how users respond. I mean, that's really what it's going to come down to. when they actually some of these things take place.
Speaking of making money, Facebook, Instagram's parent company, another big story just came out today. Facebook is now charging, or is now testing out, letting people pay to send certain messages, and you have an other inbox in Facebook.
Yeah, it just seems complicated. Like, why would I want that? I mean, I want it to be simple. Like, it's like email, right? Like, you get so overwhelmed by how many emails you get. Why would I want more messages from people that I don't know? Like, I don't know. It just
well, they're positioning this as an anti-spam or cutting through the spam type of measure. It's like, if I pay 10 cents, then I make sure that Lena sees my message because it'll get featured higher in her inbox.
I don't even get that much spam in my Facebook message. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I get a fair amount of spam in my Facebook messaging, but at the same time, basically what it sounds like to users is, pay Facebook $1 for access to your email inbox, right? For someone to access you. And I mean, if Facebook's going to want $1, I at least want like 70 cents.
Well, I have to highlight your tweet because I think you talked about how maybe like PR people are going to start using that to try and, to message you. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, PR people already message me on Facebook and on LinkedIn and on about.me, which I barely ever use.
You're so popular.
Yeah. But, it just sort of gets to the point is if you don't know that email is the best way to reach me, it's just, you shouldn't be emailing me or messaging me to begin with. But I don't know. That's just me.
I mean, this isn't without precedent. This is a lot like LinkedIn, right?
Right.
LinkedIn InMail, you have like a few free messages a year, but then past that, you have to pay to send messages to people who are not in your network. So it's not completely without precedent. I think, though, LinkedIn has always been this professional networking tool. People think this is a little icky for Facebook. People are just so personal about Facebook.
Right, because people use Facebook as a personal messaging system, almost similar to email. I mean, that's what they had kind of posed their messaging system when they went through some of those product updates not too long ago, was that it was an email system. Whereas LinkedIn just seems more of like a recruiting or professional correspondence type of network. It kind of like blends these two worlds together, I guess. But I wonder if now some of these updates will open up new business models for or new ways that like recruiters can use Facebook and PR people and other industries, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if one thing's for sure that a lot of people in the business knew once Facebook went public earlier this year, it's that these things are going to happen more and more now.
They have to make money. They have their shareholders to answer to.
Every quarter. So every 3 months, It's like, you've got to show us that you're doing new things and that there are new products and there are new ways of making money. So if users don't like it, they should get used to it because it's going to keep happening for better or for worse. So
speaking of being a public company,
segue.
I know, we're really good on those. Twitter just announced that a few execs had been promoted. So it wasn't that anyone new had come in, but basically Ali Rogani, who is the CFO, he's now the COO of Twitter, and Mike Gupta is now the CFO, taking over Rogani's role. So, but what's interesting about that is that both of them have pretty significant experience at public companies. So the thought is that this move is sort of like readying the company to maybe, get into the whole public offering sphere of things. So, I mean, we've been talking about it for a while as Twitter is a public company, but maybe this is just becoming more of a reality.
I used to work at a mergers and acquisitions newswire called Merger Market with the Financial Times, and whenever a company that's private hires a new CFO with public company experience, I mean, that's really, one of the clearest signs that IPO documents are going to be in the works within the next year and a half. That's what we were always trained to say that you pounce on that company and you get a quote when that starts happening, because it's a big signal. So, but we've been seeing a lot.
Alexia had just written a post this week about how Twitter was hitting some revenue targets maybe a little earlier than we thought, $1 billion by next year, and I think that it was previously thought that they would be hitting that by 2014. So things seem to be going well, maybe on the advertising front. So all these signs maybe point to the fact that the company is maybe going to be public soon.
Yeah.
And we'll have to deal with all the things that Facebook is.
And that's big news, but really the bigger news is that you can download your tweets, right?
Right, yes.
That was big news this
well,
week.
I can't download my tweets. I still can't do it.
No, some people, they're slowly rolling it out to users. So you haven't? Have you downloaded your tweets?
I have not. I have not downloaded my tweets.
You're not a big Twitterer.
No,
don't
I'm
tweet.
not. I'm not as big on the Twitter. I mean, on the Twitter. Why did I just call it that? That was dumb. No, I have to say I'm not big on Facebook either. I kind of am more of an observer, and I'll tweet every once in a while, especially when I get very frustrated by my daughter. But I usually just try to kind of stay back and.
But think
and
about
observe.
this: your daughter will have her tweets from before she could even tweet.
That's true. She has her own. Well, she has her own handle, Next Gupta. So
Right.
so follow Next Gupta. If you're watching.
I have not downloaded my tweets. I don't
Have
have
you?
the ability yet
No.
either. But but I know
Will
Drew
you?
Olenoff.
Will you download them?
I think so. Yes, I think it's important to own your data or to have
Yeah.
it and to be able to look back at it. I'm kind of weirdly political about that. It's something I really believe in, so I'll do it. I don't have a ton of tweets. I got on Twitter embarrassingly late, actually.
When did you get on?
I think January 2011.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I'm not going to have too many tweets out there, but I think it's a good thing. And this is, it's been such a busy week. It's the week before Christmas,
I know.
and normally things are slow.
Hence why we have all this caffeine.
I swear this isn't sponsored by Diet Coke or Coke. Regular Coke.
Well, we've been, of course, going to parties and holiday stuff. And you were at a Google party last night. I was at Square last night. And what about you, Ryan? What have you been to?
I haven't been to a whole lot of parties. I feel like most of them happened last week, the previous week. But I was in New Zealand as part of Geeks on a Plane, traveling all around the country, meeting with entrepreneurs, meeting with investors, seeing what it has to offer, and it's a beautiful place. I mean, it's almost unreal in how awesome it is. Like all that stuff from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, good timing, right?
Yeah.
I actually saw The Hobbit in Wellington on opening night.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was really
Great.
nice.
And was it filmed? It was filmed in New Zealand.
Yeah, it was
okay.
all filmed in New Zealand. So the production company is based there, and all the post-production and all the costumes and everything are made locally.
Well, our readers should check out your awesome post on New Zealand. I think that was from this past week on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully check that out. This isn't our last Crunch Week episode. We're going to have one more before the end of the year where we're going to recap the year's biggest stories. But definitely join us next week and in the new year. And thanks for watching.